Good morning, 7th graders. This morning we are going to begin our study of genetics, the second part of our unit, and we are going to specifically study DNA. Our objectives are I can create a model of DNA and I can explain the purpose of DNA. More on the model later. So, a quick review. We know that all living organisms share 8 characteristics. One of those characteristics is that they must have DNA, or genetic material. All living organisms, no matter what they look like, bacteria, monkeys, fish, they must have DNA in order to be alive. What is DNA? What does it look like, and why do we care about this 3-letter word, DNA? Well, DNA is the genetic material, and it contains the instructions for life. It's the blueprint for life. Instructions in genes, specific instructions, are called genes. Genes tell cells what proteins to make. Remember, we talked about proteins when we talked about ribosomes and organelles. Ribosomes let us have things like skin and nails and hair and organs. So proteins are super important. They're the building blocks of life, and the instructions to make them are stored in genes and DNA. Pause the video if you need more time to copy this down. DNA takes the form of a twisted ladder structure. This is called a double helix. That's the science term. As you can see here in this picture in the middle, it looks like if someone had their hands on either end of a rope ladder, they were twisting the top and the bottom in opposite directions. You can see the cross pieces in the middle, kind of like a staircase, and the outer parts of the DNA are twisted into a spiral or a double helix. Pause the video if you need more time to copy this down. DNA is stored in the nucleus of eukaryotic cells. It is almost 3 feet of DNA in each nucleus, so it needs to be wound really tightly, compacted really tightly into a structure called a chromosome in order to fit in the nucleus. So chromosomes are compacted pieces of DNA, and they contain thousands and thousands of genes, those instructions for proteins. Pause the video if you need more time to copy this down. Here is a picture representation of how all of these fit in together. So within the nucleus, there are multiple chromosomes. Within each chromosome, this compacted, tightly wound piece of DNA, there are thousands and thousands of genes, thousands and thousands of sets of instructions for making protein. So genes are in DNA, which is wrapped up really tightly into chromosomes, which is all chromosomes are stored in the nucleus. Humans have 46 chromosomes. We get 23 from our mother and 23 from our father. If you do the math, that means we get 50% of our DNA from our father and 50% from our mother. Offspring, or babies, have DNA that resembles both the mother DNA and the father DNA, or the maternal DNA and the paternal DNA. So, you guys have seen this happen before. You have some traits that are similar to your mom and some traits that are similar to your dad. That's because you get half of your genes, half of your DNA from your mother and half from your father. This is true of all organisms that reproduce sexually. I'm going to go over our DNA model expectations really quickly right now before we get started making our model. So we are going to use candy, which is very cool, to model the structure of DNA. It's going to help us visualize the double helix. We're going to be able to remember exactly what it looks like and see how those genes look. So you need to follow directions to construct your model carefully the first time. The directions are very explicit. You're going to go step by step. Make sure you are looking at the directions on your handout and following them correctly in the correct order. Any inappropriate use of materials or eating the candy before you're allowed will be automatic silent lunch, just like a lab. Models are a privilege. The behavior needs to be on point today in order for you to participate in this activity. You are only going to touch your group's materials in your plastic bag. You guys are speaking at a volume level 1 with your lab partners seated in your chairs the whole time. If you run into a problem with your model, you can't figure out why something doesn't look right, I want you to problem solve within your partner pair. Look back at the handout and then look at the teacher model before asking a teacher. You guys are very smart, very capable. You can figure out 99% of problems between yourselves when you really put your minds to it. So make sure you're going back in the video if you have more questions or if you need to get down more material. And let's get started on our model.